Coming up on today's show, there have been some rumors that have begun circulating around social media last night that could be a game changer for the Crimson Tide run game. And then later on today's show, also going to be breaking down some of the SEC championship game scenarios out there right now because there are a ton. Before we get into all that, though, I need your help. Spread the word to all Alabama fans out there. This could be some big-time rumors if they do end up becoming true this weekend versus Oklahoma. So spread the word to more Alabama fans. Share today's video, whether that's just texting them the link to this video or putting it on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, whatever it is. Make sure you guys share today's video. All right, so last night, A.K. Deer, Alabama's five-star freshman running back, tweeted this out, a little photo of him catching a football. I believe that was probably against ULM, one of those two games that he ended up playing there, either ULM or Wisconsin. Just said, update, ... So could this mean that we could have yet another freshman? Because there have been a bunch of freshmen so far this year for this Alabama team from that 2025 class that have made big impacts for this team this year. You talk about a lot of different guys. London Simmons, Latsier Brooks, Dejon Lee, Caleb Edwards, Michael Carroll, Justin Hill. Those guys have been big for Alabama so far this year. Could A.K. Deer be the next freshman to help out this Alabama team? Because we all know there have been issues for Alabama running the football so far this year. Pretty much everybody who has got some kind of carry outside Ryan Williams. He's got one carry for 16 yards. This is what it looks like right now. Jam Miller only averaging 3.6 yards per carry on 88 carries this year. Kevin Riley, saw some good things from him earlier in the season when Jam Miller was out. Just really hasn't, progressed for him so far this year. I think Daniel Hill's starting to come along a little bit here. They do a lot of very fun, interesting things with Germie Bernard, putting him in the backfield, putting him in motion, getting him a little jet sweep action. Ty Simpson, I thought he was going to run the ball a little bit more this year. I thought his legs were going to be a little bit more of a factor, but he's been more of, your typical pocket passer and scrambling a little bit when he needs to so far this year. So, I thought he was going to use his athleticism a little bit more this year. Hasn't really happened. A.K. Deer, though, he's played in 2 games this year, has 7 carries, 85 yards, averaging 12 yards per carry. Really, one of those was the big, I believe it was like a 58-yard touchdown run that he had against ULM. So that does kind of affect the average there. But still, the other game when he was playing against Wisconsin, I believe he was still averaging like 7 yards per carry in that game too. So he's been, good only on the 7 carries, though. Richard Young, I know a lot of people expected him to probably have a breakout year this year, and it just really hasn't happened, only playing in a couple of games now. 19 carries for him. Dre'lyn Washington, you got him out of the transfer portal, and we really haven't seen a lot from him either. And, Alabama, so far rushing the ball this year, game by game, as we got it right here, they have only averaged, and I've said this multiple times here on the show, over 4 yards per carry one time this season. The only time that ended up happening was in that ULM game, and, unfortunately just, hasn't really gotten any better for Alabama's run game so far this year. There have been games, where, they didn't average 4 yards per carry, like that Georgia game. I think the, Vanderbilt game, they did a pretty decent job. Even the end of the Tennessee game as well. Not necessarily averaging, that 4 yards per carry clip there, but they were able to at least control, the time of possession in those games. So that, that 4 yards per carry isn't the end all be all there. You can still do a really good job running the football when you don't hit that mark. But then, against a team like LSU, who has gotten worse and worse and worse, being able to, stop the run, you only mustered 56 yards against them. So, we have asked for, some type of a shakeup, whether it has been, getting Daniel Hill some more carries in this offense. But, we'll see what ends up happening. One other thing that I do want to bring up here when it comes to A.K. Deer is he has played in 2 games already so far this season. There's 3 games left in the regular season. If you play in 4 games or fewer in the regular season, the year is not counted towards your eligibility. You can still end up having that red shirt year. Postseason contest, though, including, by the way, this is really big as well, including conference championship games, bowl games, and the college football playoffs. Those games do not count towards that 4-game limit to end up getting your redshirt season there. So, if Alabama gives him a few carries during Oklahoma, he ends up, going off, cooking whatever it is, there against Oklahoma. Would you then play him versus Eastern Illinois and Auburn too? That would end up burning, his redshirt season because, there's 3 games remaining left in the season. He's already played 2. That would end up giving you at 5 there, which would burn that red shirt. Now, you could also think about it this way too. If this guy is a dude, as a true freshman, goes off against, 2 of the better run defenses in college football right now in Oklahoma and Auburn, you put that into perspective, he might not even need that extra season because, if he is that good, he might just go off to the NFL draft after 3 seasons anyway. So I did want to add that in there, a little bit something extra to think about when it comes to A.K. Deer, maybe getting some more snaps here this year. But he tweeted this last night. We'll see if that ends up happening this weekend versus Oklahoma. So do you guys want to see more of A.K. Deer? Personally, I definitely do. I know that, one game that, he went off versus ULM was against ULM, but still want to see what else he can do. Let me know what you guys think. Type Y for yes or N for no down at the pinned comment of today's video. So coming up next on today's show, we are going to be breaking down the multiple SEC championship game types of scenarios here. And man, there are absolutely a ton of different type scenarios that could play out here in the SEC. We still have 3 more weeks left to go. But right now, Alabama is sitting at a very good spot. Right now, number 2 in the SEC, right behind Texas A&M. They are undefeated. Alabama and Texas A&M, the only 2 teams right now undefeated in SEC play, but there's still a lot of other teams in the mix that we're going to discuss here in just a second. But first, we want to offer this deal to you. Just go to chatsports.com/BamaQTRZip to get this Columbia quarter zip today. It is a massive sale right now. It was $90 on sale right now for only $45. I know it's starting to get a little bit chillier right now. This weekend's game is going to be like kind of an afternoon game, but once it kind of, creeps into the evening time, that sun goes down, starts to get a little bit chillier now. So if you guys need a new Alabama jacket, quarter zip, whatever you want to call it here, just go to chatsports.com/BamaQTRZip. It was $90 on sale right now for only $45. I'll put that link down in the comments section and the description of today's show. It's really, really good quality there with that Columbia, jacket there. So make sure you guys go get that today. All right, so let's look ahead to the next 3 weeks here in the SEC. I took out all the extra games that weren't SEC games here. So the logo that you see, by the way, that is the home team for these games. Starting off here on Week 12, you have South Carolina versus Texas A&M, Arkansas going to LSU, big-time game between Oklahoma going to Alabama, Florida at Ole Miss. Big-time game again. Number 10, Texas, going to number 5, Georgia, and then Mississippi State at Missouri as well. 2 big-time games that we'll talk about that could really end up affecting things are going to actually happen this week. That's South Carolina versus Texas A&M, and then Florida versus Ole Miss. We'll come back to those here at the end of today's show, and I'll tell you why those games might end up being really important here. Moving on to Week 13, though, you have Arkansas at Texas, Tennessee at Florida, Missouri at Oklahoma, and then Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Most of these games I don't think will necessarily affect, what ends up happening there. Obviously Texas is still in the mix there. Oklahoma is kind of still in the mix right now in the SEC. It might end up coming into a little bit of a factor when you talk about, the tiebreakers and, win percentage against different teams and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think Week 13 is going to play a massive factor in what ends up happening here in the SEC. But the last week of the season, you guys know what it is. It is rivalry week. You have Ole Miss going to Mississippi State. I would assume Ole Miss wins that game, but, Mississippi State still, kind of, early on here with Jeff Levy, their new head coach here, and they've looked good at times, but then other times not so good. So that one, might be a coin flip. Ole Miss should win that game though. But then another big time game here: Texas A&M taking on Texas. Texas has 2 massive games to end out the last 3 weeks of the season against both Georgia and Texas A&M. But that game's going to be at Texas, so that could play a factor there. Alabama has to go to Auburn for the Iron Bowl. I'm still not going to overlook that game because you never know what could happen in Jordan-Hare Stadium here in November. Always a crazy, crazy environment there. LSU going to Oklahoma, Vanderbilt going to Tennessee, and then Missouri going to Arkansas to round out the last week of the SEC play. So I think there are 6 possible teams right now that could realistically make the SEC championship game. You have Alabama, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, and Oklahoma. Now, I have played out a ton of different types of scenarios here. Alabama can play every single one of these teams in the SEC championship game except for Oklahoma. I think that is really big. Obviously, playing Oklahoma this weekend, there's even some possibilities where you beat Oklahoma this weekend and you still end up missing the SEC championship game if you do indeed lose that game to Auburn. So we'll talk about, if Alabama can clinch here in just a second. But first, I want to hear from you guys. Out of all those teams that we just showed you right there, who would you want to play in the SEC championship game the most? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's video. Now, I, went to the website that they have there. You can, select a bunch of different types of outcomes for different games over the last 3 weeks. And the way, me just going through all the different types of scenarios, I don't believe just a straight win versus Oklahoma this weekend alone actually ends up clinching a spot. It does not clinch a spot for Alabama. Now, Texas kind of plays a very critical role in how things are going to eventually play out here for the SEC because they play Georgia, Arkansas, and Texas A&M in the final 3 weeks of the season. And, there's even this crazy scenario that involves Alabama beating Oklahoma, Ole Miss and Texas A&M both lose this weekend, which is, very highly unlikely. You have Ole Miss playing Florida, which you never know. Florida at times has looked like a pretty good team. And then you also have, Ole Miss this weekend. Like I said, Ole Miss is playing Florida, and then Texas A&M is playing South Carolina. So I don't necessarily see those situations playing out, but you never know what could happen. That's why we play the game. So if Ole Miss and Texas A&M both lose this weekend, and Texas loses their last 2 big games against both Georgia and Texas A&M, and Alabama loses the Iron Bowl, then you would actually have Georgia versus Texas A&M playing in the SEC championship game. There are, like I said, a ton of different types of situations and scenarios that could happen right now to be in that SEC championship game. And I do think after this week, going into next week, there's going to be a ton more clarity. But at the end of the day, Alabama holds the keys to their own destiny. You go beat Oklahoma this week and do not fall victim to what I predict is going to be a very, very weird Iron Bowl. I know we all love to troll Auburn. I've called them a dumpster fire so far this season, but, their defense is still really good. Their offense might not be very good, but their defense is still pretty solid there. So, you can't fall victim to, a weird type of Iron Bowl this year. They can still beat you if you do not prepare like a champion. All right. Looking at our college football channels here at Chat Sports before we get out of here, we are inching closer and closer and closer to being the number 1 college football channel here at Chat Sports. When I first started, we had like 8,000 subscribers here at the Alabama Football Report. Michigan, man, we are climbing and we are catching them. So, hopefully, maybe by the end of the season, if Alabama ends up going to the college football playoffs and goes, even to a national championship game, I think there's a very good chance that we can catch the Michigan Football Report in subscribers here. So do not miss out on any Alabama football news or rumors. We're going to continue to do videos for you guys pretty much every single day. We're live also for every single Alabama game. So do not miss out. Hit that sub button and join the community right here at the Alabama Football Report.